Let's see. Meeting. Sorry guys, someone needs a meeting link and then I'll get rid of that for you.
Nice to see so many faces here this evening. Representing real people, I assume.
Yeah, I see lots of friends. That's nice. Like Fred Kirschman, who I haven't seen since the grocery store about 3 months ago.
And speaking right now is our board president, Gary Huber. And Gary, if you want to take over, go right ahead.
Yeah, I think we should get started. I have to, I'm the board president, obviously. That's why I'm doing this part of the meeting. To be honest with you, I got a bit of anxiety about this event because we're all trying new things here. And this is a new way of doing an annual meeting. And so I hope you all sit back and relax and enjoy what we have to offer. I think the farmer panel that we have coming up here after we get through some of the basics of what an organization has to do as part of an annual meeting, I think that's the highlight for me. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the 4 people, well, 3 farmers and then Kathleen, obviously, but, all very knowledgeable people. So I'm really hopeful that we can relax and work our way through this agenda and make it be the best meeting that we can do and sit back and enjoy it, because I like meetings when I don't have to leave the house. So that's one good thing. Like I say, I'm chair of the board. And I would like to introduce the other board members because I think the governing board of an organization is a really important part of what it is that an organization has as an asset. And so I'm going to go through and particularly as board members out there wave, okay, when I talk about you a bit. I'm going to start with Jack. Jack Knight, he is
We're here.
on the left-hand corner of my screen. Jack is from up Northeast Iowa, way up by Waupun. He's been a organic certifier since 1999. So that's a little over 20 years now. I'll say this about Jack. He has a wry sense of humor. So I don't know if anybody's ever said that to you, Jack, but I love your sense of humor. But having somebody who is an organic certifier on a board is a really important part of what an organization like ours, who's all about organic farming and foods, needs, because that's a really important part of what it takes to be an organic producer is the certification process. And so Jack, as vice president, my left-hand man, you might say, is a really an asset to our group. As secretary, we have I Wen, who's on here somewhere. I saw her. I, as a professor at UNI, originally from China, she got her degree from Rutgers in conservation biology. And she teaches at UNI right now. And the thing that she's our secretary and she takes really good notes of our meetings. But the thing I would say about I is that she has an amazing way of bringing her students out to these farms that she's aware of because of her involvement with our organization to actually have their experiences be grounded in real life situations. So conservation biology, wildlife and landscapes combined on farms is what she's really about. And then our treasurer is Cindy McCullough, who I think is here someplace. Cindy runs Blue Stem Organics, which is a feed mill, an organic feed mill up by Stratford, north and west of Ames. And again, having somebody like Cindy is a really, and I've known Cindy quite some time. She's actually the reason I'm on the board because she nominated me as a board member a couple of years ago, a consumer representative. And so that's your exec team right there. Me as president, Jack as vice president, I as her secretary, and then Cindy as treasurer. The other people we have on our board is Scott Osborne. He was past board president. Scott moved from Ames recently to Ida Grove, back to the home farm where he's farming organically with his family now. But He works for Blue Rivers Hybrid, which is an organic seed company. Again, a really important connection to a part of the industry that we need to have as part of us, as part of our board. Then, so I don't forget, Margaret Smith. Margaret and I have known, there you are, Margaret, known each other for, I think, it seems like ages, actually. You've had a 20-year career with Iowa State University Extension. I think you started out as a county extension director in Franklin County, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, that could be. But you've not muted, unmute.
I started out in Council Bluffs in 1980 as the area agronomist down there.
Oh, you've got a longer career than I do.
31 years, 31 years.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. Well, I mean, recently you've moved on and now you're with Albert Lee's, an agronomist with Albert Lee Seeds, which is another important partner in this whole industry that we're part of. And you and your husband, Doug, farm up by Hampton organically. And you had a son recently got married, which is congratulations to you.
Thank you.
I know those two boys from when they were little, so it's a long time. Paul Muggy, I saw him. There you are, Paul. Paul is an organic farmer from up at Sutherland, Iowa. You wouldn't know this about Paul, but he also teaches high school part-time, and I think it's physics, if I'm not mistaken, that your specialty is, Paul, which always struck me as odd. But I've known Paul since he was a cooperator at Iowa, Practical Farmers of Iowa, and as well on the board there at Practical Farmers of Iowa. And I don't remember for sure, Paul, you've been farming organically since 2001. So that's quite a while. And that's about 20 years from now. So that's pretty darn good. I don't know if Denise O'Brien, there you are, Denise, I see you over there. Denise O'Brien is also on our board, came on last fall, actually, I believe. I've known and worked with Denise for quite some time now. Rolling Acres Farm down by Atlantic, which is what she operates with her husband, Larry Harris. Founder of Women Food and Ag Network. Secretary of Ag candidate at one time, an advisor to Afghanistan. I mean, the things that you've done, Denise, blow me away. But I'm just remarkable. This board is remarkable. So Eric Madsen, who isn't going to be seen tonight, but he's a part of the, he said a camera isn't going to be working for him. Eric is in Western Iowa. He's transitioning 240 acres of his own to organics, but he and his family, which is Vic and Cindy, have been organic for quite some time now. He reminds me a lot of his dad. I remember Eric from youth camps at PFI when he was just a little guy. But it's funny how the world keeps moving on, I guess. But now he's on our board and he has the same sensibilities as his dad. And his mom. So I'm really thankful for those people. Then we have Patty Naylor. Patty is somewhere probably, she's supposed to be here. Patty and her husband, Aaron's waving at, Aaron Lehman's waving at me, or everybody. Patty and her husband, George, farm organically over by Cherdan, which is west of here. What I can say about the pair of them is they are activists. They've been, and I remember George from the early 80s when we had a farm crisis, and there were a couple of groups in Iowa called Iowa Farm Unity Coalition and Prairie Fire Rural Action. At that time, there were white crosses on courthouse lawns to try and stop farm foreclosures. But what she brings to us is more of a worldly view, where she sees a bigger picture than maybe it is what we can have here locally. And she's not afraid to speak her mind, which I'm really thankful for. And we have Mark Schuett. Mark didn't think he could be on the call tonight. Mark is, well, he founded American Grain Processors, American Natural Processors in 2000. They process flax, canola, soybeans, and a number of other things into oils for the industry, organic oils for the use in the organic industry. And they have plants in Cherokee and Sioux City and Galva and one other place. But having that kind of person on our board brings that whole perspective of a user of products. And it's a very important part of the whole in terms of the people that we have in the board. And Kent Boyum, and I saw Kent someplace on here. There you are, Kent. Kent is from Fairfield. He's been involved in the organic Vedic city, or Maharishni Vedic city, which is actually the Iowa's newest town, apparently. And you are been involved with a greenhouse operation down there. I know that for sure. That's a 3-acre greenhouse that's been doing organics for quite some time now. And if I don't, I hope I didn't forget anybody. Oh, Kim, I'm so sorry. I have notes and obviously they're on the side of my desk here. Blueberry Bottoms Farms from down at Brighton. An organic operation that she and her husband operate. It has more than just blueberries, although that's their specialty. I'm learning a lot about blueberries from her because I'm trying to do some myself. But they also have crops, corn, soybeans, oats, hay, and that kind of thing. It's a diversified operation. So now, did I forget anybody? I don't think so. I hope not. There's, I should say that we have a 13-person board, 7 men, 6 women. So we have a good diversity in terms of gender balance, which is always something that we should always be looking for in everything that we do. And then a little bit about me. I mean, I grew up in Northeast Iowa and farmed in the 70s for 6 years before I went to school at Iowa State in 1980. Got a bachelor's in agronomy and public service and administration, and then a master's degree in rural sociology in 1987. Worked 4 years for the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation for a water quality specialist with them on some grants that had to do with sinkholes and drainage wells and other things. Then I started with PFI in 91, worked for them for 19 years until 2010. And then I transitioned from working for, and that was a really good experience for me, lots of different things. And then I went from there to being the general manager of the Iowa Food Cooperative in Des Moines, which is a direct-to-consumer, basically distribution system, but it's co-op based on a software that allows its producer members to sell to its consumer members. And then I retired from that a year ago, April, because I had a son who was going to enter high school, senior at high school. And I wanted to be more present for him during that last year of his college. And that job just consumed all my time. So I just decided it was time to move on. And now I'm so happy to have found a home for my passions, which I think we all have, which is organic farming and organic agriculture and revitalizing our communities and safeguarding our soils, air, water, all of that. So the boards are really important for organizations, and we have one that's, I think, incredible in terms of the breadth of experiences and connections and knowledge. And so I just wanted to quickly go through and say hi to them all. And I'm honored, because I became board chair last January, I'm honored to have their confidence in me to be the chair of the organization. And I'm so thankful for staff like Roz and Olga, who are spark plugs, ever-ready bunnies. I don't know what you would call them, but they are amazing staff. And I'm so thankful to be having that kind of support for what we do, because I think at this point in time in our history of civilization, we have to figure out how to feed ourselves without ruining the planet. And so that's my passion. And so I think that's probably all our passions. So with that, I just wanted to give you some sense of who it is that governs this organization.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah.
Yeah. Should I do the thing about the board members' terms and all that right now? Is that a good time, do you think, Roz?
I would, and then we're about at 6:52.
Okay.
So where you,
So there's 2 board terms that are expiring of these 13 people, and one of them is Jack and Knight, and the other is Margaret Smith. The nominating committee, which we have, has nominated them to serve for another term, and they've both said yes to that proposition. To be able to do this appropriately, we need our members actually to vote on these candidates, and we're going to follow up because we have all kinds of people here and it's hard to do a vote. We're going to follow up with an electronic email ballot that's sent by email to members to have them, what we hope is affirm these 2 candidates to be on the board. Now, next year, we're going to have 4 seats come up. So if anybody has an interest in being a part of a governing board, when we get through this kind of thing that's made us all a little bit weird this year, the COVID and the pandemic, we'll be able to go through a process where we let our members nominate as well as what we did this year, which is our board nominated these people. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay.
And you guys, I am actually ready to announce the second giveaway winner. And thank you, Gary, for the introductions. And
Sure.
the second giveaway winner will be a winner picked from the IOA members only. And I have it in this beautiful minion hat. So drum roll. Okay, we have Wayne Wingness. I might not be saying that right. Wayne, if you hear your name, please type in here in the chat and we'll confirm you as the winner. All right, I don't see it here from Wayne, so I'll pick another name. Okay, Matt Miller, I think I saw your name. Matt Miller, do you want to type here? All right. Okay. Second winner is ready to go. And now it's Roz, our executive director's turn to speak.
You're on mute, Roz.
how many times does that happen? I'm going to talk quickly. Olga's going to move my slides for me so you have something to look at while I'm chatting. And I'm just going to try to keep us on schedule. So here we go, just real quick, grab my screen. So IOA begins each year with an annual member appeal. The contributions from our donors and members are the foundation for the support we provide to Iowa's organic community. Thank you to our members for your strong and continued support. In 2020, we increased our members and sponsors by 26%. We are encouraged and inspired by this growing network of support. We started the year strong. In February, we offered another series of our growing organic expertise workshops across Iowa. Those took place in Ames, Council Bluffs, Fairfield, and Mason City. Since October of 2019, we have reached 130 participants over 8 workshops with information about the National Organic Program, organic certification and transition, organic standards, organic production practices, and insight into current organic market trends and demands in an effort to increase technical support for transitioning and organic farmers. The target audience for these workshops included NRCS, Extension, IDALs, FSA, Soil Water Conservation Districts, folks consulting and working with farmers, so crop insurance agents, farm lenders, farming organizations, educators and students. Anyone interested in learning more about organic opportunities were welcomed. Keep an eye out for our virtual series that will take place late January and early February to continue our efforts to present this information and resources. And we were able to offer this workshop series through a grant, through a SARE grant. So I just wanted to point out we're appreciative of that support. We also had an impressive agenda for the second annual Midwest Organic Pork Conference. That was planned for March 13th and 14th in Dubuque, Iowa. We developed topics to address some of the challenges for expanding organic pork, such as the lack of processing and marketing resources, as well as presenting new research and a range of topics from experienced producers and professionals, speaking about organic transition, animal health, housing, nutrition, and much, much more. Our conference was scheduled for the same weekend that the US began to close down due to COVID. IOA was one of the first groups in the state to cancel our event in the interest of safety. It was a tough call, but a responsible decision. We are so thankful for the many sponsors, exhibitors, and participants who donated their conference fees to help cover some of our unrecoverable expenses. Despite the conference setback, we are excited to share that IOA and the Midwest Organic Pork Conference will be delivering content from last year's conference as a part of the 2021 Moses Growing Stronger Collaborative Conference on Organic and Sustainable Farming. The conference is a week-long effort starting February 22nd and runs through February 27th. Additional partners who are contributing to this virtual conference are O'Grain, Grassworks, the University of Wisconsin, and Fair Share CSA Coalition. Registration actually opened today, and we will be sharing more information about the conference in coming weeks, so keep an eye out there too. Building key relationships are critical to the growth and success of the organic movement. We are so grateful for the many partners and leaders in the state that are helping IOA in developing this dynamic organization and movement. I want to shout out to Practical Farmers of Iowa. They are a pinnacle example of sustainable farming leadership in Iowa. We were fortunate to sponsor and partner on several PFI-led organic field days this summer. They do definitely bring a level of expertise and talent that is unmatched, especially during these unprecedented times. So we really do appreciate their support this summer in delivering that content for the organic community. Earlier this year, IOA joined the newly formed steering committee for the Rodale Institute Midwest Organic Center. We greatly value the expertise, the collaboration, and support Rodale brings to the Midwest, and we look forward to growing this movement together. We are also again thrilled to be a part of the Growing Stronger Conference. Moses is the premier organic farming conference in the country, and we couldn't ask for a better partner to help us reach a broad audience with the organic information and resources. It is also critical that we expand organic technical expertise in Iowa. There is so much interest in transition and expansion and very little support. We are working hard to change that. The NRCS recognizes the need and value of greater organic technical support in Iowa and has asked us to deliver a 3-part Growing Organic Expertise virtual workshop specifically for NRCS staff, and that will take place this January. We are also continuing conversations about further developing organic mentoring for the 25 team leads in the state. We look forward to working with the NRCS on this effort and other agencies like Extension and FSA to expand these efforts and support for organic producers and landowners in Iowa. IOA is also participating on an advisory committee for 2 ISU research projects. One is focused on pest management and cucurbits, and the other is integrating vegetable, poultry, and cover cropping practices to enhance resiliency in organic production systems. Both of these projects have been stalled due to COVID, so I'm unable to provide any updates on those projects right now. And finally, recently we've been partnering with the Center for Rural Affairs and trying to get information and resources out about organic crop insurance to better serve the organic producers in that area. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to try to condense this. Moving on to policy. IOA continues to share national and state policy issues with our members and network to mobilize support for Iowa-focused organic priorities. IOA is members of both the Organic Farmers Association and the National Organic Coalition. Both organizations work to broaden awareness and support for national organic policy issues related to the Farm Bill, standards in the National Organic Program, and influencing the National Organic Standards Board. Locally, we've been working with stakeholders to raise awareness about the dangers and damages of pesticide drift. And for those of you out there who keep hearing about an IOA policy committee and platform, it's coming, I promise. Now that we have Olga on board, I can focus on some other priorities. I'm just going to briefly just mention, so, I'm going to just glaze over some of these. I began serving on the OFA Policy Committee this year. That has been really helpful in developing relationships across the state or the US, as well as getting a better understanding of national issues related to organic. Likewise, I also participate on regular calls with the National Organic Coalition. We delivered action alerts this fall regarding the cuts to the organic certification cost share program. So we're providing our members information on how they can reach out to their legislators about the importance of that funding. Moving on to other resources, we like to say we're committed to staying connected with our network and our community, and we do that through a range of different resources. We have our e-news, we have our online website calendar, which is our events and anyone else's events who wants to put that information out there. We make that accessible. We have a listserv and a social media, all the different social media platforms. And many of you know that we have this great Iowa Organic Resource Directory. It's been updated at the end of 2019. If you need copies, I'll mail them to you. So shoot me an email or send a note in chat, and I'll make sure I get those to you. Again, I'm flying through, so I'll just touch on the highlights here. We know organic continues to soar. The Organic Trade Association came out with the numbers from 2019. The industry's up another 5 billion at 55 billion, which is a 6% increase from 2018. Here is a link to the latest NAS organic survey. It takes place every 5 years. I wanted to touch on it a little bit, but I'll just let you know, here's this link and I'll let you guys go out and take a look at it. The survey led to a lot of interest and folks wanting to hear from us about organic in Iowa. And that led to the Des Moines Register article that was on the front page, top of the fold on October 26th. So we were really happy about that placement and the opportunity to talk about organic issues front and center. And last but not least, I want to welcome Olga, our organic field coordinator. And we hired Olga in August. And I'm sure many of you have noticed Olga's work and presence since she started. She has many impressive talents, such as managing social media and our website content. She's noticeably amped up our social media game, as well as stepped right in to lead our education program. She has coordinated our next series of growing organic expertise, the Midwest Pork Conference efforts, and recent webinars, and you can expect much more to come. Olga also has a certified organic business. She understands the certification process, and she also has hands-on experience in interacting with the public about organic principles and standards. And most importantly, she is passionate about organic. Olga lives in Clyde with her husband and her 2 sons. We are so lucky to have found such a great asset to the organization and Iowa's organic community. And what's in store for 2021? We're going to keep on working on growing that funding. We are going to hone in on what we need to be doing to meet the needs of the organic community. We're going to keep offering programs that meet the needs of farmers, consumers, the organic businesses in our network. And really, we want to start building a mentoring program. We get calls all the time from folks wanting more information and support. So I'm going to start looking for funding and partners to start building something to where we can support the greater community. Last slide, I want to thank our sponsors. We couldn't be here without their strong foundation and support. And with that, we'll move quickly on and to give you time with the farmers and presenters who you tuned in to listen to tonight. So thank you very much for listening to me and my presentation.
Thank you, Roz.
Yes, thanks, Raz. I mean, that's a really nice job. You can tell why I'm so happy with her, as well as Olga and everybody else. We have a farmer panel, and we have Kathleen Delate and 3 producers to be part of this. Kathleen's going to start us off, and so she has some slides to show. Kathleen, I remember when Jerry DeWitt was responsible for bringing you to Iowa State, if I'm not mistaken. And it was like a really important move by the university to embrace a part of agriculture that they had not embraced before. And she's done an amazing amount of good work. And we're so thankful to have somebody like that at an institution like Iowa State University. She teaches a class on organics at the university. Plus, she has an amazing amount of field research that she's been doing over the years. And she also hosts the Iowa Organic Conference, which was a week ago yesterday, actually, virtual. A really nice conference, and they've always been a great conference. So if Kathleen is ready, then we'll introduce the other speakers as we move along. And if you have questions for these speakers as they're presenting, please type them into the chat box. We won't be answering those questions until after we hear from all of them, and then we'll work our way through. So with that, I'm going to hopefully have Kathleen, I see you there, in presentation uploaded. So, okay, great. And Olga's our technical guru, so she's going to help you with that, Kathleen. So thanks.
Yeah,
Right.
Kathleen, if you're ready to go.
Okay, I'll just say a few words before I put on the PowerPoint. Thank you, Gary, for the kind introduction, and thank you, Roz and Olga, for inviting me. It's great to see everybody here. And just want to give a shout out to everybody who attended the virtual organic conference last Monday. As Gary mentioned, we had 157 people registered for it, and amazingly, WebEx held through the whole thing. So if you didn't get a chance to attend, you can email me and I can send you links to the conference, because everything's online now in a side box. So with that, I'll share. Am I ready to share my screen, Olga? Okay, sharing my screen to my PowerPoint. Technology away. All right, can everybody see that? So just going to give a quick, because they're limiting us to 15 minutes each, overview of what our research program looked like in this crazy pandemic year. So I don't know if I can move, if you can move that screen over or not to see the whole picture. There's a shot of me and Tom Fransen's field up in Alta Vista this summer. We had an on-farm trial with Tom and 3 other cooperators I'll talk about in a second here. And they were my salvation. If we didn't have this project and we didn't have on-farm trials this summer, we would not have survived. Iowa State tried to shut down all research. And we argued that being out on these farmers' fields, it would be completely safe, and we're able to do it. So I was really grateful to the farmers. There's my email. If you guys want to email me about anything, or if you want links to the conference, let me know. So as you all know, it was a brutal year in many ways, starting with the drought, very severe dry conditions, particularly in central and western Iowa. This is the drought monitor in September, and you can still see how bad the drought was at that time. The darker areas, the worst areas of the drought. So Jefferson, Harlan had really severe drought at that time, but also Northwest Iowa and our research site in Greenfield had drought. And Northeast Iowa, where Fransen's farm was, that area fared the best, seemed to have the most rains compared to the other sites. But we're doing some research looking at the organic matter and soil moisture content, because I think the high organic matter found on these organic farms is what helped retain soil moisture, because in the end, we had pretty decent yields, which was pretty shocking given how horrible the weather was. So just a shout out again to the farmer cooperators, Paul Muggy, Scott Schreiber, Ron Roseman, Tom Fransen, and there's my husband Bob at Neely Kenyon in Greenfield. Beautiful looking corn in the beginning, and then the drought hit and the crops struggled, but in the end they did pretty well, I think, because of that high organic matter in the organic soils. So on the left, you can see the corn was curling from the drought even before what we had on August 10th, the horrible derecho that leveled fields across the state. My heart goes out to everybody that was affected. We had a huge branch in our backyard get snapped. I've been in a lot of hurricanes, and this was very much like a hurricane from Florida. It was terrifying. So just seeing all these fields crushed was just really heart-wrenching. But amazingly, in those fields were the corn was smashed down were these giant ears. So in the end, as I said, the yields were pretty good considering all these disasters people had to live through. So here's our yields from that trial. This is an organic corn breeding trial working with corn breeders at Iowa State and also University of Wisconsin. And so they're trying to get some germplasm out. So far, none of their germplasm beats the commercial organic varieties that are shown here. So theirs average about 130 bushels an acre this year, while the commercial organics averaged about 164 across all the farms. So that was pretty good yields. And you can see Viking ones did really well. So at our long-term research site at Neely Canyon Farm, Greenfield, we've been comparing organic and conventional rotations now for 23 years. And that's a flyover of the site, 17-acre site showing all the fields, 41 plots of 4 crop rotations, close up of the quarter-acre plots. And just a tribute to my soil scientist, Cindy Kim Rodale, who recently passed away, but her legacy will continue on, and USDA will continue working with us there, taking soil samples and analyzing. So we're happy with that result, but it's very sad on about her passing. So at Neely Canyon, we had this year, again, the organic rotations beat the conventional. So that's conventional corn soybean rotation, 134, versus the 3 organic rotations, corn, soybean, oat, alfalfa. Whenever you have that second year of alfalfa, Vic Mattson will be the first to tell us this, you're going to get higher yields. So 159 bushels an acre compared to the conventional 135. And adding in that, putting oats and alfalfa after the corn and soybean makes a difference in yields too. Because in the one that was corn, soybean, corn, and then oats, alfalfa, it had a lower yield than the one where the oats and alfalfa followed the 2 years of the row crop. And in oats, pretty good actually, considering it was so dry out there. One treatment, one rotation was 78, and the other, which has the longest rotation, had the highest yield, 106. But I know Ron Roseman was getting 130 bushels an acre from his oats this year. So there's a lot that goes into good oat yields. We're also working with Levi Lyle in Kyoto. Gosh, there's Levi hidden behind all this. I don't know if we can move that out, Olga, but Levi's behind everybody's faces here. Working with Levi on an organic no-till project. There's his roller crimper. So the rye crop is planted in the fall. It's crushed in the spring with this roller crimper. And PFI hosted 2 field days there this year. One was on the roller crimper. We demoed 2 types of roller crimpers. And then the other field day was on this weed zapper, which is terrifying to me, but these guys can get up. No, it wasn't working when they were really that close to it, but there's this electrical bar that goes over the top of the canopy and literally zaps any weeds that are above the canopy. So you can see what a difference it made in the yield where there was no weed zapping, 33 bushels an acre soybeans, where it was weed zapped, close to 56 bushels an acre. So we're continuing that trial with Levi next year. This time next year, we'll be harvesting corn. However, the field's gonna rotate to organic no-till corn, which is a lot trickier. He's gonna be planting that in a crushed mulch of hairy vetch. So we'll let you know how that goes. We also do a long-term rotation in Southeast Iowa, Crawfordsville. It's called Surf Southeast Research Farm. And this year it was the barley year. So we get barley from various places, most prominently Albert Lee seed. And while the yields were down because of the drought, it was dry there too. This one variety, Haxby, did pretty well at 42 bushels an acre. And that crop is planted with a red clover undercrop there. And so the whole field is red clover right now. And we'll go to corn next year. And we'll trial 4 different varieties of corn in that field. We do, every year we do organic no-till vegetables, and we had good yields this year, but they were affected by the drought. The students were happy they were affected by the drought because they didn't have to harvest as many, but we took about 200 pounds to the Iowa Food Bank and delivered some more to the food pantries here in Ames. And then for all of you who saw at the conference, the cooking demo that the chefs from the University of Iowa put on, we took a couple bushels to them and they made some food for the cooking demo for the conference. So we'll continue to still play around with this system. It's the same way where you plant the cover crop in the fall and then you crush it in the spring and then you can transplant your vegetables into that mulch compared to the typical way of tilling the cover crop in and then transplanting the vegetables. It's really a tricky system. You need perfect weather, which when do we have that for it to work right? But we're going to continue to work on it because it does have such good soil quality benefits. So, oh, my face is blocked there, but dressed for on-farm field work with my mask on. And we were really grateful, as I mentioned at the beginning, to the organic farmers. So thank you. And I hope next year will be better. Thank you. Any questions?
Impressive work, Kathleen.
Thank
You're
you.
on time.
I'm an extension.
You
We
got
did
us
it.
up. There you go. Thank you.
Sure. Welcome.
Okay, so we'll move on to our other panelists. And if you do have questions, make sure you ask them down in that chat box, because that's where we'll look for what it is that you want people to talk about more. Rob Fox is next on the agenda. Rob and his wife Tammy run Genuine Fox Farm up at Tripola, Iowa. You say it Tripola, not Tripoli. And I know that because that's where I'm from, up that way. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob, and you can let us know what you're thinking about this year and so forth and so on. So thanks.
Thanks, Gary. It was nice to be invited. For those of you who don't know, I was on the IOA board a few years ago. So it's really good for me to see how much IOA has progressed since the time I was on the board. It could be because of my absence. We're not entirely sure about that, but it is really good to see the progress, and I'm pleased with that. To introduce myself to the rest of you, maybe I should start at the beginning. I actually have a PhD in computer science and adult education, which is why it makes sense that I actually farm. We don't entirely know why that might be, but that's kind of why I do what I do, is I have this PhD and I've got to figure out something to do with it. We've been farming at this location near Tripola since 2004, and we started the farm officially in 2005. So we've been doing this for a few years now, and we decided in 2007 that we would certify organic with IDOLS. That was probably the first year that we realized we were doing this seriously, that this would become my full-time job. Prior to that, I was actually teaching as an adjunct part-time. So 2007 indicates about the point we decided this is what I'm going to be doing. We focus on fruit and vegetables and poultry and local sales. And like a lot of folks who got involved in growing vegetable crops about that point in time, we used what is known as the CSA model, where people would buy shares in the farm and we would deliver product once a week. Our first year, just to give you an idea, in 2005, our goal was to have 8 shares, and 26 signed up. So you can imagine exactly how frantic we were when our plans were changed fairly dramatically as far as that was concerned. At its peak, we had 120 shares, and our best seasons, we were typically producing between 15 and 18 tons of food. That includes poultry and produce. And the reason I bring that up is our farm is 15 acres in size. And I want to just make it very clear that it does not necessarily take a large farm for it to be a serious operation. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. This was not a toy. This was not a hobby. This was a full-time and then some job. We peaked at about 2012 to about 2015, 2016. And then over the last few years, we've had a decline in interest in the CSA. So what we've been doing now is we've been moving forward to try and do more bulk sales. So restaurants and institutions and those kinds of things. And part of that, I have to admit, is the amount of energy we had. just thought I'd show you some pictures of the farm so you have something nice to look at every once in a while. This is just a field with some tomatoes with straw mulch. There's basil in here and basil over here. We like to do interplanting or intercropping. And you can guess that the barn in the background is not doing anything for us anymore, given its look. And then we also have poultry on the farm. We raise laying flock. We have broilers, and we also raise turkeys, about 75 of them every year. And this is what it looks like when a turkey smiles. That's a turkey smile. It usually goes the opposite direction of the human smile. And we do have some bees on the farm, and this is a batch that swarmed on us this past year that we did actually manage to capture. So it kind of gives you an idea of some of the things we deal with on our farm on a regular basis. The other thing that Rob does is he has taken another job this year. He works for the Pesticide Action Network as the communications associate for Iowa. And one of the things that Pan was involved in just last year was trying to get a bill passed to create an online reporting website for the Pesticide Bureau for drift issues. And those will be some of the things I'll be involved in. So the funny thing about this particular batch of bees is I actually reported to my coworkers in Pan, well, I just came in, we captured a hive, put them in a box, you know, showed pictures to them. And one of my cohorts said in kind of a small voice, I mowed my lawn today. So I think there might have been a little bit of, okay, what is Rob doing writing for us and then doing this stuff. So here's what I wanted to do that gives you an idea of who I am. I wanted to kind of point out the challenges we've been seeing the last few years, including what happened this past year. But I want to end on the positive notes. So I'm going to just run through this part, the challenges we've been fighting. One of those challenges on the top left, you'll notice we've got an airplane that's spraying. And the building you see underneath it is where we have some shelter for turkeys. In 2012, we had an aerial sprayer go over the west half of our farm with the sprayer on. I was outside at the time. I was covered in pesticides. The turkeys were covered in pesticides. The laying flock was covered in pesticides. And our high tunnel at the time was covered in pesticides. So, you know, there's nothing like actually living an experience to get somebody really motivated to try and do more about it. I mean, I was motivated before, but this kind of made a big difference for us. But we continue to have problems with chemical trespass on the farm. And some of that has really taken a head with the increased use of dicamba recently. We have noticed a lot of our crops, in particular peppers, tomatoes, and squash, have been struggling and in the same proportion to the amount of use of dicamba in the area of our farm. And the problem with that, of course, is you can't necessarily show where it's coming from because it could drift from any direction and it can drift whenever temperatures invert. So we've been fighting some problems along that lines. And then of course we've got climate change. We had drought this year, although we're in Northeast Iowa, so it didn't bother us much. But in prior years, over the last 5 to 7 years, we've had lots of rain. And if you look at the bottom picture, that's a fall lettuce crop. Normally fall should be drier. And there we are with water. And those rows, by the way, are hilled. So we actually raised the soil and the water still came up to some of the plants. And so we've had a lot of trouble with losing crops to extremely wet soils. So we're trying to address that. And then the other issue we've had, of course, as I mentioned, is migrating markets. The CSA is no longer the in thing. So now here I am, a small farm, working hard to do the things that I do, fighting other things, and I have to chase people to sell my product. So that makes it difficult to keep working on it. So that leads to, where does my personal energy come from to do all this work? Because you have to keep finding that energy to keep doing all the things that you do. And then we added a pandemic to it this year, just because we needed an extra thing. And what that did for us in particular is that meant we did not have access to the labor that we used to have. So it ends up looking very good that I took that job with Pesticide Action Network this year, because we were probably not going to do particularly well this year running things the way we'd done in previous years. So we're on a downward slide right now, but we're looking at things that might change our luck, so to speak. Among them is we're looking at growing out crops for seed, as opposed to growing vegetable crops out for produce or for people to buy and eat. So that's kind of gives you an idea where we're at. I would like to talk about why we do organic, however, because this is the part that I think is positive and part of the reason we're all here. The picture you see in front of you is a whole bunch of different cover crops. This is one of our plots. And we basically did strips of different kinds of cover crops. There's buckwheat just about ready to bloom. We have some Japanese millet in front. We've got some clover. We tried 5 or 6 different things, gave them all a shot. This was our year of trying to learn how to grow cover crops. And we just gave ourselves a whole plot to do it in. And since that time, we've been trying to integrate them wherever we can into the farm. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. So we grow organically because, number one, we love diversity on our farm. That's the big thing. And certified organic promotes diversity. It encourages diversity. It's one of the big things that keeps the environment around us healthy. And I'm showing you the inside of one of our high tunnels right now, just to show that we maintain diversity even inside the high tunnel. Some growers will maybe just grow tomatoes in a high tunnel or one crop. But if you look on this one, you'll notice I've got tomatoes on the left, I've got melons on the right, there are onions, beets, carrots, potatoes, and beans. And the nice thing about that is we can expand our period of harvest. We can get all kinds of things. If you're doing a CSA, you need diversity. So now I'm using my prime real estate and trying to get a fair number of things out of there. And the other cool thing is I get a little bit more diversity in the critters that go into the building. Lots of toads, lots of frogs, lots of predator insects, along with the pests that high tunnels often attract, but that tends to balance things out. So that's one of the reasons we like to do certified organic. The other thing I like about it is it encourages the use of services that nature provides. I'm always thrown for a loop when people try to tell me we can invent something better than nature. That's what we imply whenever we create some of the systems that we do or some of the chemicals we do, is that we're smarter than nature is. The example I have in front of you is there's a melon crop in the center. You've got zinnias on the left, borage on the right, more melons beyond that, and then there's some buckwheat and sun hemp over on the left. This is the first year we decided to do this intensive planting, and to do it, I cut back the number of melon plants by 1/3. I planted 1/3 fewer melon plants, figuring, well, if I have 1/3 fewer melons, I can deal with it. It'll be nice. I'll enjoy it, right? We ended up getting 30% more melons with 1/3 fewer plants because I created an area for pollinator services in the same field. One more time, 1/3 fewer plants, 1/3 higher percentage harvest in the same area that I had been growing in before as far as space. So I think nature maybe knows a few things. The other thing I like about certified organic is it promotes my critical evaluation of what we do on our farm, and it allows somebody else to do a review. By having somebody come inspect and somebody look at my plan, I'm getting a good critical evaluation of what I think is the right way to do things. The example we see right here is you've got a field where I'm just using cultivation. I'm using intercropping. You're seeing onions and you're seeing brassica together. The idea there is to try and protect the brassica from those cabbage butterflies and cabbage loopers. It's not perfect, but it works some. But there are some issues. Cultivation isn't always the best solution. So there was discussion about mulch. And we thought, well, I don't like plastic mulch because I have issues with that personally. So we'll try paper mulch. So I've been trying paper mulch on and off for years. And you'll notice that I'm showing you only the pretty pictures of our farm, not the ones where there are weeds. Weeds don't exist as far as these pictures go, but I can tell you they're all over the farm. They really are. And so essentially, what I'm trying to say is part of what makes me happy about being certified organic is I gain a certain amount of satisfaction from this. And I also enjoy being in these fields that go the way I want them to go with the pollinator services, the diversity. If I don't like being in the fields, then I'm not going to want to keep doing this. And I find that by trying to follow organic practices and maybe even pushing them a little bit further than what the bar is, I'm happier. So if all else fails, I'm certified organic because it makes me happy. How are we doing for time? That's just about right.
You are right on. Just in time for another prize drawing.
Yeah.
That was great pictures. I love those, Rob. Thank you for sharing that and why you choose organic.
Yes, yes, amazing pictures, Rob. All right, so the third prize winner is going to win an Olga's Organics Relax Body Oil that's organic certified, and then organic cocoa from Lake Champion Chocolates. So let me go ahead and pull a name out of the hat. All right, Daniel Kussner. Daniel, if you want to type in here in the chat, that'd be great. If you're not here, then we'll try again. All right, I don't
see anyone with that name on the list.
Okay, all right. I have another name that popped out. Gretchen Brummel.
He's here.
Gretchen is here. All right, congratulations, Gretchen. I'll jot your name down and we can continue.
Our third panelist, Kim, were you going to introduce Nelson for us? Are you still on? Kim Andersen, who was on our board, is associated, I see Jack, with our next speaker and knows him better than I do, but I can go ahead if I can't see.
She's here.
Oh,
She's here
cool.
already. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm pretty sure that I met Nelson at an informal organic meeting, and I see Steve Hickenbottom down in the corner. In his garage is where I met Nelson. And I would consider that Nelson has been very much a mentor to my husband and myself. And here's Nelson Smith.
Thank you, Kim. I was wondering who you were talking about, but then I guess I recognize some of those things. So to start out, I went to Iowa State University and graduated in 1974 with a degree in animal science. A lot of things happened following that in the years. And in 1996, I took over management of the family farm here at Brighton. In 1997, we had our first organic crop of soybeans, Clear Highland soybeans. At that time, organics was a word, but there wasn't much of a market for most of the organic crops. So our soybeans were Clear Highland, and they went to Japan for soy milk and tofu. Well, that made them go 6,000 miles to get to their destination. Well, now our soybeans, as of this year, are going 16 miles to Professional Protein in Washington, Iowa, where they process them. They extrude the oil and use the other for feed, for organic feed. So that's a big difference in our markets, and hopefully we won't have to go back to the 6,000 mile market. Just a little bit about the farm is that we have about 200 acres of forest reserve. We're right along the Skunk River in a bend in the river. So we're kind of protected on two sides. We're on a dead end road. So there's not a lot of traffic going through. So we're in our own little world here. We have about 350 acres of row crops, which includes alfalfa, and 170 acres of pasture for cattle. And we have the river bottom, which is 102 acres of wetland reserve program. Years ago, that was tried to be farmed for, and it ended up being underwater. If you had rice, you probably were going to grow something there, but otherwise you wouldn't. So we put it in the wetland program, federal wetlands, and it's been there ever since and will be forever in that. We have CRP which is about 45 acres of pheasant habitat restoration. We have 25 acres of pollinator CRP. We have riparian CRP, where we have planted over 11,000 trees and shrubs. We have tiled terrace. We have 6 ponds. We have 7 water retaining basins and 6 dry basins. So we have a lot of different uses that we've gone through with the NRCS in cooperation with them. Our rotation is about a 4 crop rotation, basically. We have soybeans, corn, oats with underseeding of alfalfa. Then we have an alfalfa year. And if we have a good alfalfa crop that will stay with us, we'll end up being, we'll run it 2 years, just like Kathleen said on there. It's good to have that extra year, and it helps with the weeds and it helps with the organic matter. We have rye and buckwheat that we occasionally put into the rotation. The rye sometimes will be put in the fall, so we can get our own seed. We can harvest our own seed from it because we we put it in the fall and then harvest it the next summer. Then we put buckwheat in behind the rye to finish it out for that year. We are also in the Conservation Stewardship Program, the CSP. We have a variety of things in there, and we had a grant from North Central Sustainable Ag, SARE, for 1 year when we had pumpkins, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Olga, if you could put those pictures on there now. I don't know if I can work those or if you have to work them.
Yes, here are the pictures. I'm gonna go ahead and get them started.
Okay. The first pictures there are of buckwheat. This is last year's buckwheat that we put in. Okay, what's happening now?
Oh, are you seeing the presentation, Nelson?
No, I'm not.
You're not?
I don't have anything on my screen now.
Here.
Well, that saves everybody from listening to me. Oh, there you are.
Here, let me try again.
The pictures, the first pictures there are the buckwheat. Yeah, can we go back there? You'll see on the right side, well, not that picture.
Go back one, Olga. Go back up one. Yeah, there you go.
This one?
Yeah, there we go. We put this in last year, the buckwheat in last year after the rye came out. The problem is we had an early frost, and as you see on the right, buckwheat does not like frost. It's very bad on buckwheat because buckwheat has a stem that is like hollow, like a straw, like a drinking straw. So any type of frost, it does it in. Well, it happened that it wasn't mature enough because we waited 2 weeks to put it in because it was so dry and we didn't have enough moisture to germinate it. So it destroyed the whole buckwheat crop, but we had a cover crop. We had a growing green crop during the summer. So it wasn't a total loss. The bees and the pollinators also got to have something before it was gone. If we go to the next slide now. What happened in the next slide, you'll see this is the buckwheat seed that you see, and you'll see the green ones which were on there, which were destroyed because they weren't mature enough. You also see the light brown ones. That is not a mature buckwheat seed. They need to be dark. They need to be almost black. And so they weren't mature enough to do anything that we needed, but the deer liked them and the pheasant liked them and all the other little critters that'll eat them. They did eat them. So there was something there. You can go to the next one. This is a Trefler tine weeder. We try as many different machines as we can to get rid of the weeds because weeds are very resilient and we are not very resilient. So we keep working at it and they just keep laughing at us and making us work hard. But this is a Trefler tine weeder, which is made in Germany. We got the first one in 2016, and it was the first one in Iowa, and it was the third one in the United States. They just started importing them that year. So as you see, the tine weeder has no row in it for the beans to go through. This is a 30-foot tine weeder. It runs on 12 rows, 12 30-inch rows. So the beans have to work their way through that. The picture on the right, you can see the beginnings with the ground was cultivated prior to this. Then we had a rain. So it's kind of hilled up because the cultivator tends to hill. You throw the dirt toward the row and get the weeds covered, where the tine weeder then comes along, loosens those weeds up again, and it'll actually smooth that down again so it levels out a little bit on that. The next one, please. This shows on the right is the tine weeder as you look straight at it. If you take on a 30-foot tine weeder, you have about 347 tines on there. And if you put them all right close together, right next to each other, you have less than an inch between the tines. So there's no row for the corn or the soybeans or anything else that you run through there to go through without being weeded. And you notice on the left, that is where I went at a 45-degree angle across the rows and actually weeded between the soybeans themselves. I did that just on a lark because when I got to the end rows, there was no book to read on this and how to do it. The guy that was selling them from the Netherlands said, well, you just go out there and then stop and go back behind and look and see what it's doing and then do something different. You can adjust the tension on these tines as you go down the field. So if the weed pressure changes, you can adjust that either way for less pressure on the tines or for more pressure on the tines. So I was going on the end rows and it actually didn't tear any of the beans out. So I tried it and went right off a 45-degree angle across the rows, and it took the weeds out, but it didn't take the beans out. Next one, please. This is a picture of right after planting. We plant with a 12-row planter, and you see there are a lot of track marks and there are a lot of press wheel marks. Well, when you press that dirt back down when you're planting, that's the place that your weeds will first start to grow. And when they start to grow, that's the place to get them stopped. This is blind cultivation, which means that you don't see the weeds, but you're actually getting the weeds by going through it. So I go with the Trefler tine weed. It's hard to say real fast, but the Trefler tine weeder, I go the day after I plant and I take those wheel marks out. You can see right on the right side, that's after it's been gone over, and that looked just like what I'm going over right now with all those wheel marks. That loosens it up. It also lets those little fine white hairs that are the weeds that are actually growing, it loosens them up so they dry out and they'll die on that. Next one. This is a video. Will the video work? Probably slow, but anyway, you can see there's a gauge down on the lower right there. It says 0 to 9. That shows you what the tension is on your tine. So each tine has its own spring, it has its own cable, and it wraps around a metal pipe, and that makes the tension on that when you're going through the beans or the corn or whatever. These beans were about 6 or 7 inches tall then, but I've actually gone through beans at a foot tall on that, which is, they don't like it, but they'll go through it. You'll lose a few leaves, but beans will always put on more leaves without any problem, and it won't take the beans themselves out. Next one, please. There, now it's going to run with noise. Well, it's basically the same thing. You can see that it's faster than, it's as fast as a rotary hoe. You can go faster with a rotary hoe, but you have to remember rotary hoes, the hose themselves are about 3 inches apart. So there is a section in there that you're not actually getting with a rotary hoe. Excuse me, with the tine weeder, you're actually getting the whole 30 feet that you're going over there. Next one. Yeah, the videos aren't going to run very well apparently on there, but they run pretty fast on there. Okay. We're now in 2016. You'll see these are actually pumpkins. In 2016, we were picked as one of 8 farms in this area, organic farms, that Seneca Foods out of Princeville, Illinois, wanted to do organic pumpkins. And our organic pumpkins fell off the truck apparently. But so we were one of them, and we got to raise pumpkins for 4 years. It took us about 3.5 years to figure out how to raise pumpkins like they wanted them. But we did do a very good job and get it finally to the point where we raised more pumpkins than they had market for. They thought they could handle the full market of whatever we raised, but it actually, people don't do pumpkin pies except around Thanksgiving and Christmas. And we need pumpkin pies to be used every Sunday at Sunday dinner, and then we'd have a market. So I'm getting nothing on my end now.
I see pumpkins going into the truck. The video's working.
Okay, there they go. This is when they pick them up. They have the machines to harvest them. They would put them in a row, and then they would drive, this tractor would straddle that row, and it would push them up there and throw them into that dump box. The dump box you saw just before the other was, they take 2 of those dump wagons and fill a semi with them. There'll be about 42,000 pounds of pumpkins, and they dump them in those semis, and then they haul them to the processing plant. And when they pick pumpkins, they do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because they don't want to shut their plant down. So they go from one field to the next. The last year we did it, that we grew pumpkins, they came at midnight with all their trucks and their tractors and everything, and they left at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they were done with all our pumpkins. And they moved down to the next field, and then the trucks go to the next field. So it was quite an experience, and I wish we could still do it, but we kind of grew ourselves out of the market, unfortunately. So are we
Yeah,
got a lot
I
of
think
time
we're
here.
about that time. If you had a final comment, maybe.
Well, I just, the thing about organic is you got to keep your options open. You got to be ready to do something that may not be what you've ever done before, but give it a try. It could be something that could really work out. And if it isn't something that works out, it's a good learning experience for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson.
Yes, thanks, Nelson. Flying pumpkins. Whew. That's nice. Okay, we have Andy Dunham is going to be our next presenter. Andy and his wife Melissa have a farm near Grinnell called Grinnell Heritage Farm, which is part of their family's operation. I met actually Andy's dad once. He's a fascinating guy as well, veterinarian from up by Dubuque. But anyway, Andy, could you take it over from here and go?
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I'm going to try to share my screen. We'll see how I do here. Let's see. I might have to do this, and I'm going to start a slideshow. So, oops, start there. Can everybody see that? Yeah. So the biggest thing. Oops. It's going to jump ahead on me. I'll hit that. So the biggest question, I guess, is how are you doing in 2020? And I would say I'm hanging in there. So this is a photo when I went camping from one of the campsites that we like to go to next to the restroom. 2020 for us has been pretty strange. So Grinnell Heritage Farm is a farm business that I started back in 06. I had a couple years of farming experience elsewhere prior to that. Melissa and I got married in 2007, and we've been certified organic by MOSA since 2009. We started out with about 1.5 acres in 2007 of organic, or of transitioning to organic produce. And we had a lot of hay ground so we went from the corn soy rotation that was there before me to hay to get us through the transition. And then we built ourselves up to where we were selling, we had 25 acres of organic fruits and vegetables. And that was just as recently as 2018, I guess. And then 2019, we added a little more cover crop to the rotation because we saw some of the same things that Rob was seeing, where the market was shifting. So we scaled back a little bit in 2019 and quite drastically in 2020. I got interested in organic as a Peace Corps volunteer, and really, had a pretty strong farming background, conventional farming background before that, having ridden on call with my dad. So I knew a lot about livestock, didn't know that much about horticulture. I got interested as a Peace Corps volunteer because I had 1 acre or so that was given to me while I was in Tanzania. So the product mix that we had historically, and we raised pretty much everything that you could, kind of like Rob talked about and showed. We did not intercrop as much as he did or does, but we definitely geared up and did a lot of storage roots. And looking at Rob's photos, it reminded me how much I don't miss trying to mud carrots out of the ground when it's really wet, or other fall storage roots. We also did a lot of cooking greens. So we used to raise acres and acres of kale and collards and things like Swiss chard, and we'd sell those even regionally. So Whole Foods would come out on a Thursday with a semi, and they'd backhaul that to Indiana to their warehouse for us. And we did that for a number of years. Until they got bought out by Amazon, and then they hopefully there's no Whole Foods reps here because they actually do buy locally at least, but they unilaterally lowered all of their prices for producers, and it was a take it or leave it type moment. So we decided to leave it, and we stopped doing that.
Andy, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are not seeing your PowerPoint. We're seeing your pictures folder. Is that what you're trying to share, or are you trying to share a PowerPoint?
Yeah. No, I'm just going to share. I'm just going to share some photos. Did I unshare it there?
Yes. Folks were just wondering if you had something else you were sharing, or if you were sharing the right folder. So just wanted to check in. Oh
no, this is the right folder. I didn't do a PowerPoint. I just kind of.
Okay. Perfect.
Are you seeing it now? Are you seeing it now?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you click on each one, Andy, and that would blow them up more? Because right now they're little icons.
Oh, I will. I'll go ahead, Kathleen. Here, it's been thought out.
Okay, thanks.
Kathleen has seen me present more than she probably cares to. So I joke that my sense of timing is impeccable. So I joined the Peace Corps in 2001, right about the time that we invaded Afghanistan and Iraq. We decided to scale up our farming business during the Great Recession, and then we decided to scale back right at about the time that the pandemic hit. And we historically had done about 250 to 300 CSA shares. We probably could have sold 600 this year with the pandemic. Whether or not we could have gotten the labor to actually meet those needs would be a very big question. I don't know that we would have been able to meet the labor needs. So the reason that we scaled back, we decided in January, wholesale vegetable crops. So Nelson kind of touched on this with pumpkins. He grew himself out of the market. We could grow way more than we could sell here in Iowa. It's just that the purchasing by institutions and restaurants and some of these other larger, hospital systems and schools, it's just not there. And so we went from 2015, 2016 to seeing pretty robust wholesale sales. And each year thereafter, it just went down further and further and further to the point where we questioned whether or not we could even try doing it. Farmers markets, kind of the same thing. They weren't doing all that well. And our direct sales, we actually were holding up pretty well. But it was pretty risky, going forward without having CSA numbers really going up. So I ended up, I'll move it ahead to my daughter, but so I ended up taking an off-farm job, much like Rob. I kind of feel like, Rob, I'm copying your presentation here. So I now work for the Tallgrass Prairie Center up at UNI as their Prairie on Farms program manager. And so I get to go around promoting the use of native plants in the agricultural landscape, which is actually as enjoyable as growing produce is. So we started our year out like everyone else. We scaled back, but we still had quite a bit of produce in the ground. So my daughters and my wife, Melissa, and I harvested our 1 acre of asparagus, just the 4 of us, for the whole season. This is Leonora showing a very large, this is the youngest one. We paid them by the day. Leonora's 8 and Emma's 11. And so they got paid by the day picking asparagus. Successes, so we've been growing soybeans under our asparagus. Asparagus is a perennial crop, if you're not familiar. We've been growing soybeans under asparagus as a smother crop for a number of years. And by scaling back, I was able to time that pretty much perfectly. And this year I had the cleanest asparagus I've probably ever had, and the patch is 13 years old now. That's the kind of coverage that we got. You can see some of the annual grasses in the lower right-hand corner, but look at how well the soybeans smothered out my weed pressure. So we did all the asparagus, we did strawberries. We still had a CSA, a 300-member CSA's worth of a strawberry patch. So we had 3 beds that were 625 feet long. Rob, I do believe that you may have come and helped us pick some of those strawberries. That is Melissa taking some to the local food pantry. We picked more strawberries than I cared to admit. My back is still recovering. We have a licensed kitchen, and we do off-farm pizza sales. We used to do these pizza like festival Friday nights where we'd have live music. With COVID, we decided that probably wasn't appropriate, and so we did carry-out pizza. So we shifted the business to doing that. And again, it was just Melissa, the girls, myself, and my Aunt Janet. So the girls, Melissa, my Aunt Janet, and myself. And we would do anywhere between 70 and 100 carry-out pizzas in an evening, with mostly on-farm ingredients and all organic flour and all that kind of stuff. We had a huge garlic patch. So we had planted about 25,000 heads of garlic in fall of 2019. And so we pulled all those out, and this is the garlic curing in the greenhouse. And because we didn't max out our irrigation, we were dry, but we didn't max out our irrigation system on 25 acres of produce. So I was able to water the garlic like I never had before. And we ended up we're still sitting on almost 1,000 pounds of garlic. We picked that 25,000 head ended up being a lot of poundage. And then, so I'm working off the farm. Melissa and the girls are kind of taking care of stuff at home. And then the derecho hit. Blew over our farm sign, amongst other things. Can people see that? Hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the bottom right corner.
Blew over.
Yeah.
Okay, blew over. It's telling me on the top that my screen sharing is paused, so I'm not really sure what that means. We ended up losing in the derecho, so I wrote it out in our car in the driveway. And at that time we had a Honda Accord, and I actually had to put my seatbelt on because I thought the car was going to flip over. We lost both of our greenhouses, 2 outbuildings. It blew the doors in on the west side of our packing facility out on the east side and lifted the roof of it. This is a really big tree that smashed one of the outbuildings. This is looking back towards the packing shed, so you can see it blew the dumpster. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but it blew the dumpster and somehow it didn't flip. But it blew the east doors out. We had a whole bunch of these big round bales of straw that were blocking this, like the picnic table seating area for pizza nights. And it actually blew the bales of straw across the driveway and out into the field. We think we hit probably 100 to 110. The airport, they're saying at the airport in Grinnell it was like 110 miles an hour. There you can see how it blew the doors.
Can you scroll down a little bit? For some reason, your screen is frozen, or maybe stop sharing the screen and reshare it again, because we're only seeing the first half of the screen. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. It could be that I'm living in a rural area. My internet connection's not the best. So, saying it's still running. Can you see that now? Or no?
Still waiting for the screen share.
Okay. That's kind of a bummer. How about now?
It says that, oh, okay, here.
So these are the
There we go.
Yeah, now we see
so
a
these are the
blown
doors.
out
Did you
cord.
miss the did you see okay, so the previous slide, I'm gonna go back if I can. Maybe I can't. It's telling me that my internet connection is not happy with me, so I'm gonna stop sharing one more time, and I'll keep kind of talking here, and I'll try one more time. Sorry about that. So I'm gonna scroll down here because there's some pretty good photos here. Still says slideshow's running. Well.
Okay, we're seeing the
So
half photos. We saw.
I'll just talk because I think my internet connection isn't very good. So the derecho hit, we lost our greenhouses. We had our garlic curing in the greenhouse. So that evening, after picking up what we could, we had 4 wonderful volunteers that came and we moved 25,000 pounds of recently picked garlic into our packing shed that no longer had doors on it, which didn't take us as long as you would think. So we were pretty happy that we got that moved. It was stressful though, I'll definitely admit that. We still have our wildlife habitat. So I had some photos of, I agree with Rob. The reason I like doing this is I really enjoy being out and seeing wildlife. So we had a lot of praying mantids and snakes and snapping turtles and all sorts of stuff out on the farm. That's kind of what keeps me going. I've really enjoyed over the years working with the Xerxes Society and some of the other conservation groups that have come out, giving tours to NRCS folks, things like that. I think what does the future hold for us? I'm not really sure yet. You know, we had about 3 acres of garden this year. I think that's something that's pretty sustainable for our scale. You know, you can raise a lot of food on 3 acres. It would allow us to do limited amounts of wholesale. You know, we could target some of the crops that we like to do. We can still do some off-farm sales, things like that. It is kind of nice working up at the Tallgrass Prairie Center. I have to admit, after 2018-19, it's nice to get a paycheck at the end of the month instead of borrowing money to continue pouring it into your farm business. What I really think the state needs as much as anything though, is we need a way to move larger quantities of produce. Direct marketing is too labor intensive. I think we're gonna see a huge number of vegetable and fruit folks. We're gonna lose a lot of them in the next 3 to 5 years, even if they've had good years, because they're exhausted. It's just, you just can't do it for too many years and stay healthy. And so if you can't move, you need a way to sell volumes of produce if you're going to be in fruits and vegetables. And if we don't have that, we're just going to keep seeing the turnover. And it, you know, we didn't scale back because we couldn't grow it. Even with the weather challenges, we scaled back because there isn't anyone to buy it. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Gary. Sorry that my slides didn't work. There were some good photos in there.
Everybody wanted to see what that storm had done, so I'm glad we got some pictures of that. And I was also in a Prius, but it was only a 90-mile-an-hour wind when I was sitting in it. But it's and I had my seatbelt on, but I thought about what would it feel like to go flying through the air. So anyway. Thank you all panelists for that. It was really nice and to hear from you all. And I think we've got some hope in the future and we've got some challenges in the future. I think, Andy, your comment on the distribution function and how that's not something that's set up for us right now. We need to figure that one out. I totally agree with you on that. Were there questions that, Olga, that you see that we should funnel to these folks?
Yes,
Can you
yes.
take a look at that?
So what I'll do actually at this point is I'll announce another prize winner, and then after that, we'll go into all the questions. Okay, so the fourth prize winner is going to win organic cornmeal from Early Morning Harvest, as well as their honey, and then grade A organic seasonal veggies. And the winner is Kristen Poor. Kristen, if you're here, please type in the chat here.
I don't see her on the list either.
Okay, all right, we'll pick another winner. Susan Urim. I think I've seen Susan. Susan? Okay, perfect. Susan, you are our fourth winner. And then now we'll move on to questions. And the questions kind of came in following each conversation. So the first question was from Patty Naylor, our board member, to Kathleen regarding the weed zapper. And I'm actually trying to find that question now. Here, 1 second. Okay.
They just asked what weeds were there. And it was the typical weeds you find in row crops in Iowa. Pigweed, lamb's quarter, and I said, and of course, foxtail.
Yes. Thank you for your response, Kathleen.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next question was from Margaret Smith to Rob. Rob, can you share your observations about the farm business life cycle and how that fits or doesn't fit with the farmer's life cycle?
Margaret, that's a good question that I've been actually musing about for the last few years. A typical business, I think we are following a typical business life cycle to some extent, where you have all this energy to build up the demand, to build up the customer base, and then your customer base does what customer bases do. People, their families grow up, kids move away, their lifestyle changes, they start traveling, and you've kind of moved away from promoting because you've reached what you feel is the right capacity, what your right size is. And so you move away from promoting and you lose your chops or your energy for that, I think is a good way of putting it. So as we started declining in sales for the CSA, our personal lifestyle was, you know what, we worked darn hard to get ourselves into this position. Why should we start over with this again? That's a perfectly natural thing to be thinking, I think. But, you know, if you want to keep doing this, that's what you have to do, is you're going to have to renew yourself and start over. So what has actually happened for us is we've resisted, I think personally, we've resisted trying to do the same thing all over again, which is part of the reason we're moving to try and do things differently. It's part of the reason I'm working for Pan. It's part of the reason I'm looking at growing out seeds, because I still love to grow. I still love to do some of this farming stuff. But I'm not sure I want to go through the same process for the same results and the same cycle. My human cycle with how much energy I have, both mentally and physically, and yes, things are getting harder to do. They don't match up, especially with the farming cycle. The problem is farming takes a lot of energy by itself, and you have to be a marketer. And I agree complete with what Andy's saying. It would be easier if I could sell larger amounts to, you know, single locations instead of trying to maintain a list of 150, 300, however many people it is, and hope enough of them show up whenever I've got the product. But we don't really have that option either in the state right now. So that kind of leaves me either looking at, let's target a few crops, grow seeds, see if I can find somebody who will work with me directly and fits however much energy I have. But you're right, we're out of sync. The business cycle and the human cycle of how long I'm willing to grow, they don't match. And we're experiencing that firsthand. It just so happens that we have problems with pesticide drift and water and COVID. I mean, that's I signed up to farm knowing stuff like this would happen. But yeah, it's a great question. It's worthy of conversation.
Perfect. Well, thank you for your answer, Rob. Another question for you from Jean. How have you used poultry, turkeys, or other critters to help out with crop rotation and or soils, etc.?
That's another good question too. And I've got two answers for you. I have the truth answer and I have the what I would like to have done answer. The truth answer is we don't use them nearly as much as we should. Now, there have been years we've done very well where we basically put them in the rotation and put in an annual cover crop and put the poultry in later in the season when the annual cover crop is really going. Typically, it's got to be a big clover base because they love the clover. Buckwheat's a no-go, by the way, folks. But that works great, and it really does help with the system, with the fertility. The other thing that works pretty well is putting poultry out in a field to clean it up. So if you're at the end of the season with something and there's a lot of fruits out there, you put the poultry out there, they clean up the fruit, they get some extra food, and then they drop the manure and you're good to go. The downside with that, however, is birds are not efficient eaters, so they also pick up a lot of soil. So that's not necessarily the best thing for them, especially if they're on that field just prior to taking them to the processor. And then their gullet is full of soil, and processors don't care for that too much. So the reality is I felt like on an annual cover crop was the ultimate solution. Cleaning things up is great, but get them off of there probably a week and a half before you process. Hens are probably better cleanup crew. The only problem with that, of course, is now your hens, the birds you have to go collect eggs from every day, are often further away than you want them to be. So there are more trips out there. And when we're talking end of the season, I don't have extra workers. So it's always me or Tammy. And sometimes we get tired of going all the way out there. It's a good question, though.
Thank you, Rob. The next question is for Nelson from Patty. And do you harvest the buckwheat? If so, how do you market the buckwheat?
Yes, I try and harvest it if we don't have an early frost, but normally I'm growing it. I've sold it to several seed companies for seed, and then I've sold it to some farmers for cover crops, and I've used it myself for cover crops. And then I also keep seed for myself for the next year. So I raise my own seed and don't have to buy back seed. But it's not a big market, but there is a market there.
All right. And next question is also for you, Nelson, from Margaret. What crop do your soybeans follow? What are your tillage operations to prep for beans? Little or no residue evident. If this residue issue important for performance or the tine weeder? A few questions there.
Yeah, a few. Okay. Our rotation is somewhat different than is recommended for most people, but we put our soybeans in after the alfalfa. And the reason I do that is because the least amount of weed pressure is following the alfalfa, and the hardest to keep weeds out is in the soybeans. So instead of putting corn after the alfalfa, we don't tear our alfalfa up until the spring. The nitrogen that's available from that alfalfa is not actually available for that corn for that year if I put corn in right there. Where by the time it breaks down and into the next year, then that's our corn year following the soybeans. And that's why we use it that way. But most of all, it's for the weed control, because it's easier to have nice clean soybeans following alfalfa than it is following corn. And I've forgotten the other question, or was that all in there?
What are your tillage operations to prep for beans? And then little or no residue evident. And then if this residue issue is important for performance of the tine weeder.
Okay, the tine weeder, if the the trash is long, it will tend to be like a rake. But if you get it cut up into shorter pieces, it'll work its way through the tine weeder without any problem. And as far as the tillage, following the, the alfalfa to get it torn up in the spring before we plant the soybeans, we'll hit it with a disc, a heavy disc, and then a field cultivator right after that, and then we'll plant. And I usually run over it with the tine weeder before we plant, because the tine weeder is like a very fine rake, and it'll put a really good seed bed and make a nice smooth seed bed on it. So we go tine weeder right before plant and tine weeder right after we plant.
All right. The next question is for you, Nelson. Somebody has a, I can't see who has their microphone activated. There's some kids in the background there. If you guys want to mute yourself. Nelson, how often do you have to replace the tines?
They have a carbide tip on them, and I've never replaced one. Of course, I've only had it since 2016, but I asked how long they will last, because if they don't have the carbide tip on it, like all tines, the old tine weeders or tines that were behind moldboard plows and other things always ended up wearing out and going really sharp and then wearing the whole thing down. These, they told me, because of the carbide tip on them, that they'll be around after I'm gone, which I don't care how long it lasts after that then. So as long as it lasts for me, and it should, because there's no noticeable wear on it so far.
Awesome. Next question is from Patty, also for you, Nelson. How do you control weeds in a pumpkin field?
That was our biggest hurdle that we had to get that, because they wanted, in conventional pumpkin growing, which Seneca Foods has done that for 40 some years over there in Illinois, but it's all been conventional. So when we started the organic, he wanted us to do it the same way they did. Well, they plant in 60-inch rows. 60-inch rows in organic is not a good thing with vining crops, because you can cultivate only for so long, and then the vines, the pumpkin vines, spread out and you can't cultivate then. So we ran into a problem that way, and I finally talked him into letting us go back to 30-inch rows. We still use the same population, which is actually only 4,500 seeds per acre. And normally corn is 30,000 seeds per acre. So it's very difficult. And it took us a while to get it worked out, but we got 4,500 seeds per acre in 30-inch rows, but the seeds are about 2.5 feet apart. And then we staggered them in those 30-inch rows. And that let us cultivate all the way to the center. And then once the vines come out, we're done. But by that time, the pumpkins have such big leaves, they do a lot of shading. And it's just like the soybeans that shade the weeds out. Those pumpkins would shade the weeds out with their big leaves. And then that, that got us cleaner pumpkins, which also got us a better yield.
All right. Thank you, Nelson. Another question from Eric. Do you add additional fertility, specifically and after the beans for the corn, or rely on the alfalfa reserves from 2 years ago?
I'll do some of both, because it depends on the year. But I have put sprayed on fish fertilizer, the liquid fish fertilizer, and we found that we needed that for the pumpkins too, because pumpkins are very intensive in taking fertility out of the soil. And the other thing is, they wouldn't let us go for pumpkins on pumpkins, or even pumpkins with another crop in. They wanted 3 years between pumpkins on them, because it's for a disease problem, it's for a pest problem, it's also for a fertility problem. So as far as the corn, I do occasionally put on fish fertilizer to add to the nitrogen, yes.
All right, thank you, Nelson. Next question is for Andy from Wendy. Andy, in your opinion, what should a new farm bill include?
Wendy, I don't know if I want to answer that. I might get run out of the meeting. We should regulate CAFOs like the poop producing factories that they are, which would effectively make them illegal, which would allow livestock to go back outdoors and make it such that you could raise them in smaller batches profitably. I would put I would pay farmers for ecosystem services. I don't see any models out there that haven't either been presented by or co-opted by agribusiness. And so I'm skeptical of all of everything that I've read about that thus far. I think that agribusiness will get their tentacles into it. And so I think it's fraught, but I think it'll have to be done somehow. I know American Farmland Trust is doing some of that work. Man, I'm going to stop there, Wendy. I'll get myself in trouble. I don't think that the Republicans and Democrats can come together and craft a bill that doesn't suck.
All right. Well, the next question is from Jean, and she's asking you, Andy, how about food preservation to cope with C-19 supply demand issues? COVID-19.
Yeah, so preserving food and grow. So like what Nelson was doing with the pumpkins, you saw how those were being handled. Those were mechanically harvested and taken to a processing plant, and relatively quickly they were being canned. It's a very different market than the fresh market is. So like fresh produce going into the grocery stores, it's just handled in a very, very different way. Even carrots and potatoes and things like that, you just can't be that rough with them without ruining, shelf life and or appearance. People just wouldn't buy it. I don't think that that's bad necessarily, but then the price too, Nelson, I don't know if since you're not doing it anymore, do you want to share how much you got per pound on pumpkins, or per ton or whatever they were paying you?
At the end, we'd finally come up to about 10.5 ton per acre, which was really good compared to what we started out with. And they were paying, our last payment was $102 or $105 a ton. So like it was very lucrative for us because we didn't do any of the harvesting or the trucking or any of that. That was all them. All we did was plant and maintain it until we couldn't cultivate anymore.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. I won't discount food preservation. The state of Iowa does not have the infrastructure to do that. So those were being shipped to Illinois. And we got burned back in 2017. We raised 2 semi-loads of sweet potatoes for a processor in Michigan. And the contract was for them to be dirty. We got them all loaded up and we shipped them to Michigan, and we're all happy because we thought we were going to get a nice paycheck, and they rejected them at the dock for having too much mud because it was a wet fall. So we then paid to ship our 2 semi-loads of sweet potatoes to Michigan, home from Michigan, and then paid for 2 backhauls that were missed by the semis coming home. So we paid 6 times the shipping to Michigan to not sell sweet potatoes. And it is, you have to know what you're getting into. And we'd had success selling to the same organization prior. So just be careful when people come knocking saying they want to buy a lot of stuff.
Another question for you, Andy. How do you contain your
This is Nirmal.
grazing poultry?
Yes, organic.
Sounds like
that's probably for Rob.
Sounds like you could benefit from a chicken tiller. Okay. It's probably for Rob. Rob, can you answer that? Did you hear the question by the way?
I did not hear the question.
Okay, so the question is, how do you contain your grazing poultry or housing? Sounds like you could benefit from a chicken tiller.
Well, in the fields, we have a combination of poultry netting, which have the solar powered chargers that keep critters that we don't want in there out and kind of keep the chickens in. Occasionally a chicken on a windy day can get enough thrust to pop out of there, but generally speaking, the fences do the job. And then we have various portable buildings that we use. The most portable is actually an old running gear that we basically built a shed onto. And that works great for the hens because they can they can go up a ramp fairly well, but it does not work well if you have broiler chickens. So in that case, we've got a couple buildings on skids, and we use those to move them periodically. But we always allow the birds to leave the buildings. One of my pet peeves are the salatin cages, where they keep the birds inside the building all the time. And I don't call that free range. I call that moving enclosure. So we like to do what's called day range. They go into the building at night for their protection from owls and other critters. They're still surrounded by the fence. And then during the day, we always let them out. We move their building to a new location. So it's covering a different spot of field every 2 days, because during the sun hours, the birds like to go into the shelter and get shade. And that's where they're at the most. So you can destroy perennial pasture rapidly if you go much more than 3 days in one location, we found. Kind of depending. I mean, the hens will kick it up and really dig into it. And the broilers, they just mat it all down.
All right, thank you for your answer. A question from Tommy Hexter for all of the panelists in the IOA board. What can soil and water conservation districts, local government do to help with organic farmers and encourage more organic farming? Who wants to take that one?
I did write in something there, Olga, about, and there may be people online that could talk if they're members, if they've been members of soil and water conservation districts. I know I've been to their board meetings, and I felt there was a lot of prejudice against organic in the one board meeting I attended. And so I'm saying education. I know Roz has been working on educating NRCS folks, and I hope within that group, maybe some soil and water conservation district people could be invited too, because the more they know, the more they'll be, willing to look at applications coming in from organic farmers in a more positive light. You're muted.
More people running for their soil and water conservation district boards too. So that's another opportunity to get involved and in that policy side of organic. But having conversations are key too. We have a Iowa representative on the call today. And so making sure we're talking to our policy leaders about the issues that are important to us are key. So call up, email, talk to those people that are in charge in your communities and in your counties. It makes a big difference. And I'm here to help with that. So let me know if you want to have those conversations.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Tommy.
I mean, Tommy, what would you say?
Well, I just got elected to the Soil and Water Board here in Poweshiek County, and so I was asking because I want to listen to the people. I'm not sure exactly what I'm getting into here, but I'm hopeful. So if anyone has any ideas they think of moving forward, send them my way. Thank you.
I think it's great to try and reach to that audience, because they typically just do things the way they've always done it, and they have a lot more potential than they have. So I'm glad you're on that board.
Well, there's a very negative connotation toward tillage in the soil conservation world. We have good data that shows good soil quality from some of Kathleen's work with organic systems. But I think there needs to be, and people have worked on this previously, but some real measure we can do in the field that soil and water conservation district commissioners can take out to illustrate. Because just talking and showing numbers on a screen, I don't think works for a lot of people. Works for some people, but I think we've really got to get feet on the ground and really look at some measure that's meaningful to show the soil quality is good in organic systems. And yes, they do till, but because of these other things, so there's a real anti-till mentality out there among soil conservation promoters.
Tommy, do you have a background in organics? Are you on the call today just to get a little more educated about the topic?
Well, I have a background in vegetable farming, roughly speaking, and chemical-free, not certified organic. So just happy to be here. I've learned a lot from Andy Dunham. I'm from Grinnell as well. So just learning more.
All right. Well, there is a follow-up question from Wendy to Andy. And Wendy says, Andy, I should have been more specific in my question. You spoke about large-scale wholesale production. What would be included in an ideal farm bill in regards to food systems? Andy, if you want to take that one.
At least we're in Iowa, so if I get in trouble here, it won't resonate elsewhere, I guess. It's complicated. So we do a terrible job with food in the United States. We're subsidizing junk food and cheap, low quality meat, like the federal government is. So we need to stop doing those things. So if you go to France, the cheapest food to buy is bread made with 4 ingredients. And it might be white bread, but it's still like better quality bread than you can buy anywhere I've been in the United States for like 70 cents a loaf. And you go into the grocery store and you can buy organic broccoli there more cheaply than you can buy soda. And so we need a system like that. And so like we really should be making it so that if we should be spending our food dollars on real good food instead of what junk is here. And so like if we did that, we'd have a level playing field. Like if you look at the government My Plate recommendation, we don't import or grow even 2/3 of what it would take to put that many fruits and vegetables in front of every American. And we waste 1/3 of all of the fruits and vegetables that we import and grow here in the United States anyway. So like we're not even putting enough stuff in front of people. And part of that calculation is including potatoes that go into French fries as a vegetable, and so like I'm going to say it, this is the least food educated place in the least food educated country that I have ever been to. And I know like I'm being harsh, but like people here do not know what food is. Like Velveeta is a food. So education, we need education and federal money for real food.
All right. Well, you guys, there are no more questions as far as I can see. If I missed any, feel free to type them again. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and pick 2 more prize winners since we have 2 more bundles. And feel free to type any other questions you may have. So the 5th prize winner will win a $25 certificate to Blue Stem Organic and an IOA t-shirt. And I have Anne Cromwell. Anne, if you are on the call, please type in here.
I don't see an Anne.
Okay, all right, so I'll pick another winner. Trish Daughtry.
I don't recognize that name either, Olga. I don't see it on the list.
All right. Okay. How about Joanna Hunter?
I sure saw Billy.
All right. Should we just do Billy?
Billy, is she with you?
All right. We'll call Billy the winner here for this one. And then the last prize is an organic center cut pork chops for them from Becker Lane Organic and the IOA Clean Canteen. And Pete Kapustka, is Pete here?
He was.
Pete, are you still here?
Looks like it. Yep, he's waving.
All right. You'll be getting some nice pork chops and a canteen. All right, so moving on to questions. We have one. We are first year transition to organics. What advice might there be in how to choose a certifying agency?
All right, Joanna Hunter, is here.
We gotcha.
Yeah, the thing it froze up on us. Sorry about that.
Okay, we gotcha.
I wrote in the chat that I don't want to endorse one certification agency over another. I think it's a personal decision. You heard today from the panelists, it seemed like we heard 3 different agencies mentioned, certification agencies. Our farm operations certified through IDALS, Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship. I'm on their board, full disclosure. They're a wonderful organization. I'm not sure they're taking more people. Maybe somebody can let me know, because they don't have enough staff. So they're full up. I know MOSA and
I know for a while they were, but last year Mari had said they were opening up more spots. So unless you've heard something new since the end of 2019, I think they are taking new clients. That's just throw that out there.
great.
But one approach to take is just talk to other farmers about how they use and what goods and bads they found about them. Pick your
And
neighbor's
call a
brains.
few different ones and talk to them about what you're doing and what their fees are and what their process is and due diligence.
Yeah, the certifying agency that I go through for my business is Oregon Tilth. So at the end of the day, do your research, look at a few different agencies, because all of them have slightly different fee structures. Especially, if you're located in Iowa, for somebody to fly out of Oregon and to inspect your facility might be more expensive than dealing with a certifying agency that's closer to the state that you're in. So just a few things to keep in mind.
Just to add to that, if you have lots of seeds, that would be somebody like me. You might want to ask how they handle that, because when I first started looking around, one wanted me to fill out a form for every seed I had, every seed type. And we were growing somewhere around 60 different crops and about 250 different varieties. I was not going to give them 250 pages with the safe seed pledge for each and all. I wasn't going to do that. So you might want to ask questions specific about your farm that you think might set you a little different than everybody else and see how they'd handle it.
I think one thing to be thinking about when you're talking about certification companies going forward is that with COVID, a lot more things are going to be done online. And so you want to have a company that has that presence or that ability to scale up into doing certifications and doing paperwork with technology, as opposed to having to do farm visits all the time in order to get information back and forth.
Yeah, it's a good idea. If Rob spoke of having a lot of seeds. We also had a lot of seeds in a greenhouse operation, probably over close to 100 different varieties each year. Sometimes you can, however, like Johnny's or Elberly Seed will put the whole list on one page, and we had the sales and the manufacturer do all the work, and then it's a page or two with certifying it. So it made it much easier. As Rob said, if you had to do that all yourself, it would be just an enormous amount of work. So, but we've used IDALS for like 18 years, I think. Originally, one reason was because I thought it was the easiest if we were to export to Japan or something like that. But different people you'll talk to will love one certifying agent much more than somebody else. Here in Jefferson County, there's a style where the OCIA, I think, is much kind of local, and we've always been happy with IDALS, however. So thanks.
All right. Well, you guys, I don't think I see any other questions. Thank you to all of our farmer panelists tonight. We really appreciate your time and your insights. And we also appreciate everyone that attended. Thank you very much for your interest. And Roz, if you want to add.
I'll just say thank you as well to our panelists. I think this was the best part of the night. I really liked the dialogue at the end, and it was useful for a lot of different reasons. And if Roz wants to sign off with comments, that would be great.
Mute. Yes, I want to thank all of you. This is so exciting to see so many people turn out, especially during the pandemic. We all have Zoom and virtual meeting fatigue. So I was a little just wasn't sure what to expect here tonight. So I am excited by all of your feedback and your participation, and I look forward to doing more and hopefully seeing you in person, hopefully this summer in some outdoor venues. But exactly, Kathleen. So yes, thanks to all of our panelists, great discussion. We're seeing great feedback in the chat box over here too on the topics. So again, if you're not a member and you're interested in supporting the work that we're doing and you think we're doing a great job, consider joining us. We'd love to have you.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Same here. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Fabulous.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I enjoyed all the presentations.
Thank you. Thanks for the feedback. Hey, Paul, how's the game going? You're muted. I can't hear you.
Yeah, they won by 35. Yeah, I didn't really watch. I was here for most of it.
Okay, good.
A blowout.
Yeah.
Friday will be the tough one because Cherokee's #3 in the state and they play the #6 team in the state on Friday. So that'll be the big game.
So is it Sutherland versus Cherokee?
No, my granddaughters play for Cherokee, which is.
Oh, they're
only
Cherokee.
15 minutes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And Roz, just FYI, I got a message from Angie Schkerenhorst that was on this meeting. She said that would love to learn more about membership. So
good. Yeah.
I
would love to talk about membership. That's great.
I'll be connecting with her. I tried to send her a message to our membership link, but it didn't go through. She must have disconnected.
Okay. Well, great job, Olga. You just kept us moving nice and smoothly. It was just like,
thank you.
We've been doing it for years.
Great job, all three of you, Roz and Olga and Gary.
Yeah, I think this was a great meeting, amazing conversations. Loved seeing all of the pictures, just having those visuals helped tremendously. And what great participation too from the attendees. So that's great.